The aim of this webinar is to explain what will happen if a student has to self-isolate at home for up to 14 days. What we're going to look at is what do we mean by self-isolation and when will it occur for a pupil. We're going to look at what we are calling the pupil's home learning timetable, which they will switch to if they're self-isolating at home for 14 days. And we'll also look at live lesson protocols for those lessons which will take place over the internet when a pupil is self-isolating at home. So what do we mean by self-isolation? Well, if a pupil has to self-isolate, that means they must stay at home for a specified period of time. There are three reasons why a pupil would have to self-isolate. The first is if they've displayed symptoms of COVID and are awaiting test results. Typically, this should only be for 2 to 3 days. The second reason is if they've tested positive themselves or someone in their household has tested positive, and in which case they must self-isolate for 14 days. The third reason is if a member of their year group is tested positive, and as a result, the whole year group is self-isolating at home for a 14-day period. So how will a student learn while self-isolating at home? Well, if they're self-isolating for that first reason when they're awaiting test results, then that's just like a normal absence, so they should carry on with any homework tasks as normal. If they're self-isolating individually, because someone else at home is test positive for COVID, then their subject activities and resources will be posted on Google Classroom. The subject teachers will direct pupils to these activities, and as a guide, pupils should try to follow their normal timetable as far as possible in order to manage their time each day that they're at home. The third reason, and what we're going to focus on for the majority of this presentation, is what will happen if a pupil is self-isolating at home for 14 days as a result of the whole year group self-isolating. And in this case, pupils will switch to their home learning timetable. So what is the home learning timetable? Well, the home learning timetable will match pupils' normal timetable. If they have maths period 1 of week A on a Monday morning, then they will have maths period 1 of week A on a Monday morning if they're working from home. The lessons themselves will take place at the same time as if they were in school. So lesson 1 will begin at 8:40 in the morning. Lesson 4 will begin at 1:10 in the afternoon. The big difference is that there will be 3 types of lesson format. Pupils will either have a live lesson, a webinar, or a period of self-study. So what do we mean by a live lesson? Well, during a live lesson, pupils will join a Google Meet session, a bit like a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call, and this will be led by their teacher. The lesson will be interactive, and that means the teacher will be able to ask pupils questions, and it will also be an opportunity for pupils to ask their teacher questions as well. The second type of lesson is a webinar. A webinar is a video or a recording or a presentation where the teacher will explain a new topic or perhaps role model a new process for the pupils. During the webinar, there will be opportunities for pupils to pause, take notes, and answer written questions if appropriate. The third type of lesson is a period of self-study, and during these lessons, pupils should work independently on any tasks that their teacher has set. Details of this work will be communicated via webinars, the live lessons, and also through Google Classroom. So what will the home learning timetable look like? Well, let's imagine your son or daughter is in 7H. Here is their home learning timetable. So if we look at Monday of week A, we can see that period 1, they have a live maths lesson. So in this case, the pupil should log on to Google Classroom, where there will be a code for joining the Google Meet for the live lesson, which will then be led by their class teacher. Period 2 is a webinar for English. So again, a link to this webinar will be available on the Google Classroom for the students to join that webinar and watch that lesson. Period 3 is a self-study science period. So during this period, people should carry on with any science work that they've been set and will be available via Google Classroom. Similarly for period 4, which is a history lesson, and then period 5 is a live Welsh lesson. So again, the student will have to log into their Google Classroom and join the live Welsh lesson. In addition to the live lessons, webinars, and periods of self-study, every Wednesday, there will be a registration period. The registration period will run like a live lesson. There will be a class code for joining a Google Meet, which will be led by the form teacher for each reg group. For years 7, 8 and 9, the registration period will take place at normal time at 12:35 in the afternoon. Year 10 and 11 will join their registration period at 12 o'clock as normal. The year 10 and 11 home learning timetable looks slightly different in that here we've taken account of the option blocks. So where a student takes, so Monday period A, whatever lesson the student has taken, that will be a live lesson. Period 2 is in option block C, but that will be a webinar in whichever option lesson or option subject the student has taken. Now, attached to this presentation is a summary of all the timetables for each form group as necessary, so you'll be able to check when your son or daughter has a live lesson or webinar or a period of self-study. If you're in Key Stage 3, in order to find out what that period that timetable looks like, I've just shown an example here. So if we look at the Year 7 page, you'll see that all the home learning timetables for each year group are shown. So if your son or daughter is in 7R, you would look at 7R, where we've got the timetable for week A and for week B. Pupils also have a copy of their home learning timetable in the back of their planners. So how will this home learning timetable work? What will be the logistics? Well, the timetable will begin 24 hours after a year group has begun to self-isolate. So this means that if a year group begins self-isolation on a Tuesday, the timetable will begin on Thursday of the same week. As I've said, pupils will have a hard copy of their home learning timetable in the back of their planner, so they can refer to that as well. And as I've also said, we've attached copies of the home learning timetables for each year group to this presentation. I also wanted to talk to you through what will happen with live lessons, as these will be an integral and very important part of the home learning timetable. But in order for them to work efficiently and safely for both our pupils and staff, there are some live lesson protocols that all students must follow. So pupils should aim and attend all lessons. It is up to them to make sure they are ready to log on in time for the lesson. And if for some reason they are unable to make it, they should email their teacher to let them know. And a register will be taken for each lesson. Whilst you don't have to wear your school uniform for a lesson, pupils should be properly dressed in appropriate clothing. They should treat it like a non-uniform day in school. Expectations of behaviour are exactly the same as they would be in the school classroom. Poor behaviour could lead to a student being asked to leave the lesson. At home, when you are attending a live lesson, pupils should aim to make sure they're in a suitable location. They should ensure that the background of their video is suitable for the school situation. If they can work in a communal area in the home, for example, a living room or dining room, then they should do so. In advance of this lesson, pupils should be prepared. That means their exercise book, notes, resources, and all their materials to hand. They should also make sure that any device they're using is sufficiently charged with battery power. Pupils should always join a live lesson with their camera on and their microphone muted. Finally, once your attendance has been recorded, the teacher will then explain how the session will run. You will be asked to contribute, or pupils will be asked to contribute in different ways depending on the content of the lesson. There'll also be opportunities for pupils to ask questions of their teacher, but during the session, pupils may have to turn their camera on or off, and also their microphone on or off. And finally, in line with all Welsh Government guidance, live lessons will be recorded. So there's a lot of information there. So can I summarize exactly what you need to remember? So firstly, when a pupil is self-isolating for 14 days, if they're self-isolating individually because someone in their household is tested positive for COVID, then they should access their work from their subject Google Classroom pages. If they're self-isolating as part of a whole year group, then they will switch to the home learning timetable. The home learning timetable will match pupils' normal timetable and lessons will take place at the same time as in a normal school day. The home learning timetable will comprise of 3 different types of lessons. There'll be live lessons, webinars, and self-study periods. The home learning timetable will begin 24 hours after a year group begins its 14-day period of self-isolation. Therefore, if a year group begins to self-isolate on a Tuesday of week A, the home learning timetable will begin on Thursday of week A. And finally, live lessons. Ahead of a live lesson, pupils should log on to their Google Classroom. The live lessons will be led by their teacher, and pupils will be expected to answer and ask questions as appropriate. And pupils and parents should familiarise themselves with standard operating procedures for live lessons. And finally, in line with Welsh Government guidance, those live lessons will be recorded. I appreciate that is a lot of information, but hopefully it gives you a picture of what will happen when students are self-isolating at home and how we can minimise the disruption to their learning and ensure their learning experiences continue to be valuable as they would when they would be in school. Thank you for listening.